you walk about 30 yards out and stand still for me.
Sweet Liberty, Helldivers, when the hell are we going to get a siege tank in this game? But don't worry, I got you covered today. We're going to be making an artillery loadout build for Helldivers 2. There's going to be a lot of flexibility with this build depending on which faction you're fighting. I would say there's two mandatory picks you need to make with this build to kind of have it like pop off. Anyways, we'll talk more about that in the overview section. Let's start off with the Let's start off with the stratagems actually this time. So starting off with the stratagems, got our headphones on now, which means we're serious. So stratagem wise, first one we're starting off with is the anti-tank emplacement. Do you gamers like sitting? Of course you do. It's probably what you're doing right now with this video. The anti-tank emplacement is really fun. This thing is really satisfying to just sit there and just beam targets from across the map. Really powerful, really satisfying, doesn't even have that long of a cooldown. Now, we'll talk more about what you should be doing to kind of like play around with this stratagem in the overview section. Next stratagem pick here, we're going with the mortar sentry. Nothing screams artillery than mortar fire. The only thing you really need to be careful with this is when enemies get close to you, making sure you don't get hit by your own mortar. And for the two other remaining stratagem slots, I would actually probably always lean towards picking the stratagem weapon, the Wasp. This thing has an artillery mode, and so if you want to be more on the go, the stratagem weapon is going to have you covered. So I think that's a really good pick. Other than that, you really need things that are going to cover you while you're sitting there in your anti-tank emplacement. So something like the machine gun sentry is something I gravitate towards. But if you're going against something like the automatons, any of the barrages work. I think that also fits in line with this artillery theme. And some other broad choices you can make, something like any of the guard dogs work as well. They work when you're sitting in that anti-tank emplacement as well, and so it'll at least give you a heads up when enemies are close, or just like cover you altogether from I'd say a light chaff patrol. But hopefully now you're starting to see kind of the gist of this loadout with the stratagem picks here, as far as very stationary, kind of want to cover your own little sector. And when we go to the equipment section, there's going to be like a big brain gamer move that we're going to talk about, that usually in a section part we don't ever really mention. So let's go ahead and jump to the equipment section. Now for the equipment section, primary weapon wise, most of the time you're going to be dealing with things that just get too close to you. So I think anything close quarters, think shotgun, the arc blitzer. The arc blitzer is actually what you're going to see me using most of the time. I actually don't like the arc blitzer too much against the automatons or the squids. I don't know, just doesn't feel right to me lately. So I'd maybe take a shotgun or another close quarters weapon against them. Against the bugs though, the arc blitzer, it's just that's when it feels really satisfying. Anyways, secondary wise, again, kind of up to you. Just know to kind of like mix match. So if you have a medium penetration primary weapon, maybe take a light chaff clear with your secondary, something like the last dagger I think is what I'm playing with here. I'm having a good time with it. I'm not totally blown away. I'm not willing to kind of change my tune about the dagger, but it's decent. And then grenade wise, really the thermite is going to cover heavy targets when all else fails essentially. So I think thermite's a good choice, especially against the bugs and the bots. Squids, maybe not so much, maybe take just one of the other grenades for like general chaff clear. And armor wise, I will give a special shout out to, you're going to see me using the engineering kit for more grenades. It's kind of my go-to, but the fortified, where you get that explosive damage resistance, because mortars, there's a good chance, they might land on you. This armor set will keep you covered. But the big brain move that I was mentioning earlier is for the boosters, where you can put the machine gun on your supply pods. You take this booster, and it kind of works as a sentry for you, so you don't have to waste a stratagem slot on it. You just, you got to be really selfish with the resupply. But honestly, you're kind of, setting up your own perimeter in your like own kill zone that is very defensible position. So it's actually not a bad idea to call the resupply on you, so your teammates should always know they can come to your like little sector and it's safe, and they can resupply there, and they can go out and keep doing what they're doing. But just note, that's my big brain kind of call out for this build. So let's go to the overview section and kind of talk about the playstyle for the various factions. So in the overview section, now just in general, like I would say points about this loadout, this build. You want maps that are just completely open, that don't have too much, I would say, fog of war. Not called fog of war, but that gloom or that fog, something like that, where it really hinders your distance. Something like the moon map, you'll probably see that with the bugs. You just have a wide field of view, and you can snipe the bugs all the way across the map. It feels really satisfying to do that. If you're thinking more of the urban environment, yeah, just make sure you have clear lines of sights on these streets. There are a couple like elevated sections, usually they're around like points of interest, that this is nice to plant down on, but really if you're just like at an intersection for those urban maps, that should be good enough. And of course, I think this should go without saying that this build really excels in defensive missions, but I think in the longer missions, the 40-minute ones, it does just fine there as long as you have that, again, huge field of view. This might be considered a little bit weaker for the blitz missions just because those are 12-minute missions and you kind of want to be on the go. This kind of maybe does struggle a little bit on those missions. But as far as the factions go, bug-wise, I would take, again, you're locked in with the anti-tank and then the mortar. I think something like the machine gun sentry, because the machine gun sentry has such a low cooldown, this is a great way to just kind of just get that zone control and clear out like the normal chaff. When there's a larger thing like a charger, impaler, or a bile titan, the anti-tank emplacement just blows them away, and it again feels really satisfying to just be taking out charger after charger and then sniping something else across the map. Really satisfying gameplay. I feel like this build actually was excelling against the bugs, and that might be because of the map, but man, this felt really good and I felt really dominant, basically having my siege tank fantasy come to life. Now on the flip side, against the bots, I think actually taking the shield relay is not a bad choice to help against, you know, the range fire that the automatons have. Other than that, it's business as usual. You put down your tank, your anti-tank emplacement. This build is actually really good at taking out dropships and warp ships. Should be around 2 shots in, like, I would say the usual spots. So for the automatons, those side engines, 2 shots should do the job. So any reinforcements coming in, you absolutely obliterate. And then just the normal automaton force, yeah, you can just stare them down with the anti-tank emplacement and just chunk them down one after the other. You know, if you have your machine gun sentry, that's going to help out. It has medium penetration, and then the mortar is just going to go to work for you. Now, if you are taking something like the wasp, oh, really good against the bots. It's also really good against the bugs too. It absolutely like shreds them across the map. I really like the artillery mode with this weapon. Yeah, it does use the whole like canister, but man, it's really good feeling to just get like a burst of like 5 kills immediately. So I would definitely take the wasp with the automaton just because there's more of a chance of having to relocate a lot more often. So having the wasp on the go, and the fact that this thing in the regular fire mode, it absolutely dunks on like devastators and stuff. So yeah, maybe for the automatons, make sure you do lock in the anti-tank emplacement and you lock in the obviously the mortar, and then take the wasp, and then maybe a barrage or a shield relay. And if you take those 4, you should be having a good time. I don't really need to talk too much, I think, about the primary weapon. It's pretty basic, you know. You have your close range weapon when things are creeping up on you. Maybe they sneak up on you. Your shotgun, your close range weapon, whatever your choice, should be enough to either clear them out or help you get away. And then something like thermite grenade against the bots is going to help with those hulks. You just stick them once and you get the hell out. And now when it comes to the squids, the wasp, as far as that choice, also really good against the squids. As far as like sniping overseers, that's a really strong pick there. And also if you can target an overseer in artillery mode and they're around a bunch of voteless, you'll just shred the entire pack. Wasp is, I wouldn't really say the wasp is slept on. I think everybody knows that it's really good. It's just with this against the squids here, you are, I feel like, again, like with the bots, you're a little bit more on the go, but that's okay. The anti-tank emplacement, like I mentioned, has a pretty short cooldown. So once you're done basically clearing out an area, it's fine to just kind of pick up and just move to another section of the map and just like kind of plop down your defensive position. Things to watch out for with this build that maybe is going to struggle a little bit against the squids are those elevated overseers. Obviously, if you're taking the wasp or the machine gun sentry, they should do a pretty good job at cleaning those up. I really wouldn't use the anti-tank emplacement for those, you know, flying overseers. They can be a little tricky to hit, especially because the anti-tank, the reticle, a little bit slower to move. As for other than that, harvesters they're pretty good at sniping anything that's not moving. So you really want to catch them before they catch you. But as long as you get the jump on them before they get the jump on you, you should be fine. Even if they get the jump on you first, you know, you just got to stare them down. Enough shots will take down the shield, and then it's just hit them in the weak joints, and they just fold just like everything else. But that's the build overall. This build is a lot of fun. It's definitely a different playstyle. Again, until we actually get, I would say, tank stratagems, this is probably the closest thing we're gonna get to, again, for that siege tank fantasy. Now, I guess if this whole time you guys are thinking, what the hell is a siege tank? go play StarCraft 2 or StarCraft 1. It's the humans basically. Their tank, it goes stationary and it turns into basically this artillery fire. But that's the build. Going to be a shorter video today. Don't feel like bogging you guys too long with my jibber jabber. So I will see you next time. Peace and take care.
Collateral is my favorite kind of damage.